Hello, fellow food lovers. Today I will be making Cantonese sweet and sour pork with fresh pickles. You will need 1 pound of pork cut into cubes, half a can of pineapple chunks, half a bell pepper, and half a medium onion. For the pork batter, you will need 1 egg white and 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. For the fresh pickles, you will need 1/4 cup vinegar, 1/4 cup water, and 1/4 cup sugar. For the sweet and sour sauce, you will need 1 cup of water, half a cup of vinegar, 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 heaping tablespoon of cornstarch, and 1/4 cup of ketchup. Okay, so make the marinade for the fresh pickles. You will need 1/4 cup of sugar, and 1/4 cup of vinegar. And 1/4 cup of water. You want to stir that up using a fork. Make sure the sugar is dissolved in the water and vinegar. You're going to use this fresh pickle marinade for the green peppers and the onion. So you want to rip all the guts out of the membranes and the inside of the bell pepper. You don't need that. And we're going to cut the bell pepper into chunks. Not too small, not too big. Yeah, about that size. And then you're going to put those bell peppers into the fresh pickle marinade. And you're going to get a medium onion, and you're going to use half of that. So you're going to cut that into chunks as well. So I took the outside membrane out because you can't really eat that. So you want to separate all the layers of the onion before you put it into the marinade. That way the marinade juices can get into it easier. The fresh pickles is kind of my take on Cantonese sweet and sour. They don't really pickle the green peppers and the onions, but I think it really improves the taste of the dish. So generally you want to do this step at least 3 to 4 hours before you make the dish. The bell pepper and the onion, if you marinate it in the pickle juice for at least 3-4 hours, then it will actually taste sweet and sour just like the pickle, like a sweet pickle. Okay, so when I mix that up, make sure the onion's immersed in the marinade juice. And if you're gonna pickle this for 3-4 hours, maybe every hour give it a little stir so everything from the bottom comes up and everything from the top goes to the bottom. Okay, so I have a pound of pork cut into cubes. So I gave it a pinch of salt to season it. And I'm kind of mixing the salt into the pork cubes to make sure they're well flavored. So I'm gonna break an egg, and I'm actually gonna drop the egg white into the pork, but not the egg yolk. You don't need the egg yolk for the batter. So I'm just gonna put that aside and use it for something else, the egg yolk. Okay, so I'm gonna use my fingers, I'm gonna marinate the pork with the egg white. Make sure the egg white is well mixed into the pork and covering it. That's gonna form part of the batter when you mix the cornstarch in with the egg white. So the pork cubes, the pound of pork cubes, the cubes are fairly large, not overly large, but they're a mouthful basically. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of cornstarch in with that. You need a ratio of 3 tablespoons cornstarch to 1 egg white. Those are heaping tablespoons of cornstarch. Okay, so I'm going to mix the cornstarch in with the pork and the egg white. So the egg white and the cornstarch is going to form a batter around the pork. So when you deep fry it, it's going to be a nice golden brown. So make sure you mix that well. Make sure that the pork is well coated in the batter. So an egg white cornstarch batter is the traditional way to make Cantonese sweet and sour pork. Okay, let's get cooking. So I have a wok half filled with oil. It's on high heat. So to test if it's hot enough to deep fry, I take a wooden chopstick and I dip into the oil, and as you can see, it's bubbling. That means it's ready to deep fry with. Okay, so I'm gonna give the pork one final mix into the batter before I drop it into the oil. And I'm going to drop it into the oil one piece at a time. And with a pound of pork, I'm going to make it into 2 batches. So first batch, I'll put in half a pound of pork. And once that's done, I'll do the second batch of half a pound of pork. If you put the whole thing in, the whole pound, it's going to be just too crowded and it's going to wreck it. So don't do it. Okay, so that's half a pound of pork in there. When it starts to fry, you want to take a metal spoon and kind of break up the pieces because they'll be all kind of stuck together when you drop it into the oil. So you want to separate them so they're separate pieces. Yeah, just like that. Okay, so I'm going to put a plate behind the wok. I'm going to put a couple paper towels on top of the plate so that when I take the battered pork out, it's going to sit on the paper towel so it can absorb all the excess oil. So you want to make sure that the batter is a nice golden brown when you take it out. Now, it'll probably take about 5-6 minutes for the pork to be cooked. And you want to make sure that the pork's cooked before you take it out. So a good golden brown color means it's done. If you take it out when it's a light colored batter, it probably isn't going to be cooked yet. So I'm going to put the rest of the pork in there and give it a little stir, mix it with the batter before I drop it in. So sweet and sour pork is a very classic Cantonese dish. You won't see it in a lot of Canadian Chinese and American Chinese restaurants, but if you go to like a traditional Chinese restaurant or a traditional Cantonese restaurant here in Canada or the United States, you'll get it there. It's very different from the kind of battered sweet and sour pork that you get in a chop suey place, for sure. Okay, so the batter is a nice brown color. It's done. Okay, so I usually recycle the oil. I'll put it into an oil container. I strain it through a sieve, and I keep it in an oil container on top of the stove for when I have to deep fry again in the wok. And then I wash the wok, and I put back on high heat. So I added 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. Okay, so the fresh pickles, the onion and green pepper that I've been marinating for 3-4 hours, I drained all the juices so it's dry. I'm gonna put the veggies into the wok and deep fry it and stir fry it for a few minutes. Not overly cooked. You want to just warm it up basically. So maybe 2 minutes stir frying it. And the juice marinade you're being soaking it in, you can just toss that. You don't need it for anything. Okay, so give it a quick stir. Then after 2 minutes, you're going to add a cup of water. Okay, so 2 minutes have gone by. I'm going to add a cup of water. I'm going to add half a cup of vinegar. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/4 cup of ketchup. So for the sauce, you need 1 cup of water, half a cup of white vinegar, 1/4 cup of sugar, and 1/4 cup of ketchup. And you have the pickled onions and the pickled bell pepper in there as well. So give that a stir, bring it up to a boil. Okay, so while that's boiling, I'm going to make the cornstarch slurry. So So I'm going to take 1 heaping tablespoon of cornstarch. And then I'm going to add 1/4 cup of water to that. Give that a stir. Make sure that the cornstarch is well dissolved in the water. Okay, I'm going to stir the cornstarch and pour the slurry into the sauce and give it a stir. Make sure that it thickens properly. So that's pretty much the right consistency for a sweet and sour pork. I'm going to dump in 1/2 can of pineapple chunks. Make sure you drain the juices from the pineapple before you pour it in. You don't want to add any extra water into the sauce. And then I'm going to add the battered pork pieces in there now. I turn the heat off and I'm going to give it a good stir. Make sure that the pork is well coated in the sweet and sour sauce and the veggies and the pineapple are mixed in with it. This is a real fantastic dish to eat with rice, with the sweet and sour sauce and everything. And when you make the bell peppers and onions into a fresh pickle, it really is really more enjoyable to eat those veggies when you're eating sweet and sour pork. The smell is quite intoxicating. It's with the vinegar and the sugar, it gives off such a strong, pungent smell. You know it's going to be a real strong tasting dish for sure, sweet and sour. Okay, there you go. A very classic Cantonese dish, sweet and sour pork with pineapples, bell peppers, and onions. And to kick it up a notch, I made the bell pepper and onion into fresh pickles too, which is not typically done with this dish. The bell peppers and the pineapple give a really nice color to this dish for sure. And when you use ketchup to make the sweet and sour sauce, it gives it a really tangy red color as well, and it's sweet and tangy. And yeah, make sure when you're using canned pineapple, you use the chunks. Don't buy the slices or the tidbits. Okay, bon appetit.